If you know one thing about JVC is that they invented VHS, probably because they won't stop banging on about it. But JVC has a long history that goes back to the start of the 20th century, and it doesn't begin in Japan, but New Jersey. What's with the Victor name in the Japan Victor Company? How did a Japanese company with American roots fare during the Second World War? And why haven't we seen much innovation from them lately? This is the JVC story. The invention of recorded audio at the end of the 19th century led to a gold rush of companies wanting to capitalize on this new technology, like the AI gold rush today. One such company was the Victor Talking Machine Company, founded in 1901 in New Jersey. It became famous for the His Master's Voice logo, which came from a painting showing a dog named Nipper listening intently to his deceased owner's voice. The original painting rather embarrassingly shows an Edison phonograph, not a Victor machine, but this was edited out for the His Master's Voice logo, of course. Victor grew quickly thanks to its early adoption of the 78 RPM record format, but they sunk again upon the introduction of wireless radio. Why buy physical media when you could stream it for free, especially when live broadcasts sounded better than records? Victor's response was higher quality recordings done with electrical microphones and amplifiers, launched in 1925 with a big splash as Victor Day. They launched the first consumer record player to play these recordings, the audiophile's choice for the 1920s. Victor's success led to subsidiaries in other countries, and in 1927 they founded the Victor Talking Machine Company of Japan and were responsible for pressing the first Japanese phonograph recording. 2 years later, Victor was purchased wholesale by the Radio Corporation of America, or RCA, less for the record player business and more for their distribution network to sell more radios. A few months after the purchase, the Wall Street crash led to a big decrease in the record player market. Consumers who could barely afford food, let alone records, switched to listening to the radio for free. Victor of Japan switched from making phonographs and records to producing radios and speakers in the 1930s, and also produced Japan's first locally made television in 1939. With the outbreak of the war between Japan and China, RCA weren't comfortable with a Japanese subsidiary, so withdrew their funding. It was bought by one of the 15 Japanese zaibatsu, or family-run mega-corporations. RCA allowed the company to continue using the Victor and His Master's Voice trademarks, but only in Japan. The company would go on to be sold to Tokyo Electric, a company that would go on to become Toshiba. Being named after an American company while fighting the Americans wasn't ideal, so Victor of Japan renamed itself to the Nippon Onkyo Company in 1943. You might think that the Onkyo name means that there's some connection between JVC and high-end audio company Onkyo, but sadly no. Onkyo in Japanese roughly translates to sound resonance. A completely separate company became that Onkyo we know today, and in fact there was another company, Nippon Denki Onkyo, that became Denon. At the end of the war, Victor of Japan was renamed once again to the Japan Victor Company, or JVC for short. Ownership changed again to the Industrial Bank of Japan, but they quickly ran into financing problems. Japan was on its knees after the war, and there was no money to repay JVC's debts and keep the company going. The bank approached Toshiba again, and also the American RCA company, to take on JVC, but there was no interest. JVC would eventually be owned by Matsushita, better known by their Panasonic brand. JVC's main focus after the war seems to have been producing radios. Like after the Wall Street crash, times were hard in post-war Japan, which meant few people were buying records. But by 1953, the economy had recovered enough that JVC began selling records once more, and by the late 1950s, they were producing musical instruments and stereo reel-to-reel tape recorders. A seminal moment came in 1959 when JVC developed their first video tape recorder. They weren't the first to create this technology. Bing Crosby, the famous crooner, had proposed one as early as 1951, and the BBC had shown off their Vera machine that had been developed in 1952. That machine wasn't practical though. The tape was pulled through at a rate of 5 meters per second. What made the JVC machine revolutionary was the two-head helical scan system that meant the tape speed was much slower. However, the machine was still the size of a small room, so only really useful for TV studios. This quickly changed. In 1963, the KV2 was a great deal smaller with a built-in monitor. By this point, it could record at a speed of 15 centimeters per second, meaning a 1-hour TV program could fit onto a standard 7-inch reel of 1-inch videotape. Video recorders were starting to become somewhat practical. They would become even more practical with the first colour video cartridge recorder in 1966. This formed the basis of the U-matic video cassette standard created with JVC's parent Matsushita and Sony and released in 1971. JVC had been manufacturing TVs throughout the 1960s and in 1970 introduced the Videosphere. With the world fascinated in space travel, this was a novelty TV shaped like a space helmet from the film 2001: A Space Odyssey. It was truly portable and could run off a battery pack or the car's cigarette lighter, but it was perhaps the iconic look that made it sell so well. JVC was also moving into high-end audio as Japanese electronics became a force on the world stage. In 1971, they developed CD4 with old American partner RCA. It was arguably the best of the quadraphonic systems for LPs, but like all other quadraphonic systems, it was ultimately a failure. The Victor company had always been both a hardware business producing phonographs and a record producer working with recording artists. JVC had continued this tradition, but in 1972 spun their record business off into a separate company. That company would go on to create US and European divisions, would spend the late 80s and 90s producing console games, and survives today as Victor Entertainment at the URL jvcmusic.co.jp. U-matic had failed to gain a hold in the consumer market due to its high cost and short running time. For the next generation of video technology, Sony, Matsushita and JVC went their separate ways, producing their own standard. As we all know, Sony produced Betamax, JVC created VHS, and Matsushita released its VX format. As you may have never heard of VX, you won't be surprised to know it was pretty short-lived. Matsushita quickly threw their weight behind VHS from their subsidiary JVC to try to head off Sony's dominance. JVC were happy to license their format to all takers, and Matsushita's backing encouraged other companies to support it over Betamax. VHS won the format war despite being the last of the formats to be released. I've now realised the first video recorder I experienced was the first VHS machine that JVC produced, the HR3300EK, although it was branded by Granada, which was where we rented the device from. JVC wasn't just video though, they still sold a wide range of audio products, both high and low end. JVC also tried their own line of Walkman-style cassette players and sold a range of car stereos. On the hi-fi end in the 1970s, JVC offered a wide range of hi-fi components including speakers. The GB1E Globe speakers were supposed to sound the same no matter where in the room you sat and were the height of 1970s fashion. In the 1980s, JVC introduced direct drive cassette decks that were supposed to offer much better sound through better speed stability. By 1990, they were offering DAT recorders and digital sound processors. Like many Japanese electronics companies, they would dip their toe into computers through the MSX format, but like those other companies, they weren't very successful. JVC would offer better quality video recording with the SVHS standard. They would also add high-quality stereo sound and compact VHS-C tapes for camcorders. JVC introduced WVHS that allowed for analog high-definition video, then digital VHS or DVHS that, as you can probably work out, recorded video digitally. VHS was ideal for recording vast amounts of data. 8-track digital audio recorders for the music industry use VHS tape. As the world started turning to disc-based video formats such as DVD, JVC stuck to their guns, refining DVHS into D-Theatre. That offered higher quality video, but with few consumers owning high-definition TVs and discs being more convenient, these new VHS formats failed to gain any traction. Most people didn't even buy SVHS video recorders. They stuck with a standard VHS video recorder, probably recording in lower quality long play mode, until they bought a DVD player and a DVR to record their TV programs. JVC's inability to capitalize on DVD was due to its lack of funds after backing a previous disc format a decade earlier. You may be aware of Laserdisc, a large optical disc that provided better quality video playback than VHS. JVC, again backed by Matsushita, offered the rival VHD format that also went up against the CED format by JVC's old parent RCA. CED would be the ruin of RCA in the 1980s. JVC fared a little better. VHD was a moderate success in Japan, and JVC could also fall back on its VHS royalties. But with the lack of success of Laserdisc and CED, JVC never launched VHD worldwide, and its lack of success damaged JVC's finances. There was talk of a high-vision version of VHD, but with the success of VHS for playing back pre-recorded films, there was little incentive for JVC to push VHD hard, as they were only cannibalizing sales from their own format. Better to promote DVHS, but that also didn't gain much traction. The failure of all these new formats and expiring VHS patents severely damaged JVC's finances. 4,000 jobs were cut between 1991 and 1995, R&D budgets were slashed, but they did introduce the first widescreen TV in 1991, and they developed the new video CD standard with Philips. Video CD promised to be a more convenient video format, but with a maximum vertical resolution of just 288 pixels, it didn't look that great, not much better than VHS, and it couldn't hold a full movie on one disc. DVD fixed both of these problems, and that wrong-footed JVC, although they did contribute their MPEG compression work from video CD. JVC had sold a video camera with their early VHS machines and continued selling a range of popular VHS camcorders in the 80s and 90s. The company then moved into producing video projectors. JVC tried selling PCs, but this was already a crowded market and they found it hard to make inroads. By 2001, JVC accounted for only 7% of parent Matsushita's sales. They shed a further 3,500 jobs and continued to report losses. Parent Matsushita wanted to get rid of JVC and did a series of deals to merge it with Kenwood, creating JVC Kenwood in 2008. The two companies combined their efforts in car entertainment and dropped loss-making lines like camcorders. In the 2020s, JVC sells car entertainment systems, rebranded TVs, headphones, a couple of Bluetooth speakers and a boombox. The best part of its range seems to be its award-winning projectors. In Japan, they sell some more rebranded products, a few more audio products and a camcorder. The JVC brand was introduced to Japan in the 1990s, but the company is still known as Victor and they still own that brand for the Japanese market. So if you want earbuds with the His Master's Voice logo, they're available in purple for just £32 or 5,940 yen. Sadly, they don't make record players, but there's a limited edition music box designed to look like those old Victor phonographs, a snip at just 1.2 million yen or around £6,400. VHS was a success because it was a good format, but also because it had the backing of Matsushita and that JVC aggressively licensed the technology. Back in 1901, the Victor company capitalized on the success of recorded audio. In the 1960s, JVC realized the next logical step was recorded video. They refined the technology into something that was the right product for the time. JVC realized VHS had a limited lifespan as customers demanded cinematic experiences. The problem was their timing. They developed VHD in the 70s and it hit the market just as customers were buying video recorders. They didn't want two systems, especially as VHD's quality wasn't much better than VHS. Why buy it when all your local video rental shops stocked VHS tapes? JVC backed the video CD standard, really just video files on a compact disc, but optical media in the 1980s couldn't contain enough information for a full movie at a decent resolution. VHS tape could hold all of that information and more, which is why JVC created the SVHS and DVHS standards. But they were fighting their own product, VHS, that customers had just bought. Why upgrade when there aren't higher quality tapes at the rental shops, and rental shops won't stock the tapes if there aren't any players? It's a classic chicken and egg story. The same problem happened with DVHS. There weren't any high definition TVs, they were just too expensive to produce, so there was no market. Like VHD, JVC got the timing wrong. The failure of CD4 and VHD wounded the company's finances, meaning they had to fall back on evolving their VHS line to keep paying the bills. But when the VHS royalties dried up, they were a spent force. VHS was definitely JVC's crowning achievement. No wonder they're always banging on about it. Victor and JVC capitalized on the boom in recorded audio and video. A similar boom for bicycles and then automobiles happened around the time that this audio boom happened. One company that benefited more than most was Dunlop. After all, you always need new tyres. Watch the full history of the company on the right. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.